Well, as Puerto Rico continues to struggle with an economic crisis and the devastation of Hurricane Maria, a new problem is growing. Like many parts of the country, the U.S. territory is facing an opioid problem. Fentanyl-related deaths are on the rise, and local officials are struggling to keep up. According to a new report from the Associated Press, Puerto Rico witnessed more than 600 fentanyl-related overdoses and 60 deaths in 2017. There were 200 overdoses and 8 deaths the previous year. But DEA officials and local nonprofit groups believe that the actual deaths and overdoses are far higher. Dánica Coto reported that piece for the Associated Press. She joins me now via Skype from San Juan. So, Dánica, several U.S. states are dealing with their own opioid problems, but those states, they weren't devastated by a hurricane. How did the storm make this crisis worse for Puerto Rico?
A lot worse, if you ask experts. They said that the panorama changed completely after Hurricane Maria. It was a Category 4 storm, and it caused more than an estimated $100 billion in damage. But it also shut down most of the smuggling routes that drug dealers use. So there were no ships coming in at the time, there were no ferries coming in, there were no planes flying in. And so drug dealers tried to find substitutes for largely heroin. And they found fentanyl. And after fentanyl, they started, mixing it up with heroin. They started adding it to cocaine and marijuana. And in addition, prescriptions were waived at the time as a humanitarian gesture. So pharmacies were refilling prescriptions for people who were already, enduring things such as no water, no power, no food. So it was all a very chaotic combination for the crisis.
You mentioned fentanyl, and that also you say that it's legally produced in Puerto Rico. How has that impacted drug use?
Greatly, if you ask the experts. It is legally produced in the U.S. territory, but it also is being smuggled in by Mexican cartels via the Dominican Republic and via the Postal Service. And that type of fentanyl is being produced largely in China and India. So there's a large amount of supply. It cuts down the cost for cartels, and people get a much greater high. Fentanyl is about 50 to 80 times more potent than morphine.
Do you think that the Puerto Rico government has responded appropriately? Have they done enough for this crisis?
If you ask nonprofit organizations who work with drug addicts, they say absolutely not. The U.S. territory failed to apply for a $7.8 million grant from Congress. And this is money, obviously, that the island greatly needs. It's going through a 12-year recession. It still is trying to restructure a portion of its $70 billion public debt load. And so nonprofit groups say that money could have greatly been used for treatment. As it is, Puerto Rico did receive $4.8 million over a 2-year period for treatment of opioid addicts, but obviously $7.8 million more would have been, of great benefit.
How big of a deal is this in Puerto Rico? Is this something that people are talking about and discuss openly and are seeking help for?
It's being discussed, but mostly among nonprofit organizations and experts. Overall, these groups say that people overall don't care. Obviously, most of the people being affected are homeless people. And overall, they're largely not seen that much on the streets, except maybe at stoplights. But that's what concerns people, that there are a growing number of deaths not being reported. One nonprofit organization I spoke with said that a drug den that is, visited by dozens of addicts is now completely empty, that they're seeing, 3 to 4 deaths a week in most of these drug dens, and they want people to be talking about it. They want, addicts to be aware. And not only that, they want people, just regular people in the community to participate. There's a bill that would allow Naxolone, which is a medication that would reverse respiratory failure caused by an overdose. So this would help, addicts, and they're trying to get it to people. So, in case you just happen to be on the street and you're trained on how to use it, you can save someone's life.
Yeah, it's so important that there's a discussion and that people talk about this. Dánica Coto, I want to thank you very much for coming to us from San Juan and reporting this story from Puerto Rico.
Thank you very much.